Welcome back for another fun home decor project. This poof is a lot of fun to make and is completely functional for your home decor. Let's go ahead and start by talking about the yarn. You'll see that I made my first one in this natural color, but on camera today I'm going to be making one using the Ice Lily colorway from the line of Billow, which is a bulky weight yarn, and this is from We Crochet. The reason why I love this yarn is it is a cotton. So whenever we think home decor and we're making something like a poof that we want to hold up, it's really important to consider a cotton because it's not going to have as much give or stretch as other yarns might over time. It's a really sturdy yarn. So this is 100% cotton yarn, and it is a thick and thin. What I mean by thick and thin is as you wind this or cake this, I love to cake my yarn from Hanks, you'll see that it is thicker in some spots and thinner in other spots. This makes a fun texture, which is amazing for home decor to have that nice chic, almost like rustic texture to your item. The other thing you'll need today is a crochet hook. I used a 6mm hook, so choose your favorite 6mm hook for this project. I also used a stitch marker since we will be working continuously and not joining in our rounds, so a stitch marker is crucial for that, as well as a yarn needle to weave in ends. And then the optional thing that you see here is a zipper. Now you don't have to have a zipper. If you do, be sure to have some sewing thread and a needle nearby too in order to sew the zipper in. The reason why I love the zipper part of this, and this is a 22-inch zipper that I chose for this, is that then you can open and close your poof whenever you want. Now, if you just want to fill it with those light beans, which is what I did with my first one, it keeps it really light and easy to move and shift around the house. If you know you're never going to open it again, go ahead and omit the zipper, and then we'll just slip stitch that closed like we do for on the first side. But if you would also like to use this as a storage device, by placing a zipper in there, you can open and close and access the inside of your poof whenever you want. And what that means is you can store your children's stuffed animals. Now, that's just one idea for it. You can throw in extra blankets or small pillows, maybe your Christmas pillows that you don't know what to do with until the next holiday comes around. If you have smaller ones, you can throw them inside of there and use it as stuffing. Or if you have old pillows that you no longer use, you can also use that instead of purchasing more stuffing. But I love the idea of taking all the stuffed animals that are scattered all over my house and zipping them inside the poof. And it's a great way to shape your poof. And then when you need those stuffed animals, you can unzip it, take them out, play with them, and then put them right back in. And it helps keep my house a little bit less cluttered. And my kids love stuffed animals, so we have a lot to choose from. Let's go ahead and get started with this really fun project. To get started, we will be creating two pieces, which will be the top and the bottom. So you'll create this next part twice, and then we'll create the cylinder. So we'll have three pieces to assemble once we create them. And the reason being is I find by slip stitching them together, it creates a really nice thicker crease along the top and the bottom, so it shapes it nicely. So we're going to start by creating the bottom or the top, they're exactly the same, in the circular pieces that we'll be doing, by making a magic ring or a magic circle. And then we're going to single crochet 10 inside of the magic ring. And now I'm going to pull that closed, but not quite all the way. I like to leave a little bit of space because I find it's easier to work this first stitch if I leave a little bit of space. So for round 2, we are going to go ahead without joining. We will not be joining and chaining one. We're going to be working these rounds continuously. And of course, I always make that first stitch a little tight. But I'm going to single crochet 2 stitches into that first, and then go ahead and mark the first stitch of the round. It's really important to use your stitch marker for this to keep track of what round you're on. And then I'm going to do 2 single crochets into each of the stitches around. So what this does is it increases from 10 stitches to 20 stitches around. And now that I'm finished with round 2, I can go ahead and pull that center ring really tight and weave it in and secure that in place. And now we're ready for round 3. And for round 3, we are simply single crocheting into each stitch around. No increasing, marking the first stitch of the round, and we're just going to single crochet 20 stitches. And now for round 4, we're going to be increasing again. We are going to do 2 single crochets into the first stitch and then mark the first stitch of the round. And then we're going to single crochet into the next stitch. And that's a repeat around. So it's 2 single crochets into the next and then single crochet into the next. This will increase from 20 stitches to 30 stitches. And then for round 5, we're simply going to work each stitch around, not increasing. So just work the 30 stitches and then come on back for round 6. Now for round 6. For round 6, we will do 2 single crochet stitches into the first, marking the first stitch of the round. And then we are going to single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches, and that's our repeat around. Now notice the 2 rounds below we did an increase and then we single crocheted for 1 stitch. On this increasing round we did an increase and then we single crocheted for 2 stitches. So the round after this will be single crocheting around, so all the odd rounds will just single crochet into each stitch around. But the next increasing round we will do 2 single crochets in the first, and then we will single crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. And then after that, it will be 2 single crochet in the first, single crochet in the next 4 stitches. Repeat that around with just those single crochet rounds in between. We will continue to do that increasing. It will increase by 10 stitches every time we do an even round that has an increase until we end up doing 2 single crochet stitches, single crochet into each of the next 10 stitches. Repeat that around and then 1 round solid, and that will be 120 stitches. So we're increasing until we have 120 stitches. This will be the top and the bottom, so we'll make 2 of these. They take about 1 hank, to be honest. So once you create one of these, you can go ahead and you can just simply set it aside, create the other one, and then we'll set that aside, and then we'll work on our cylinder that has that fun cabling. So I'm going to go ahead and let you work this up, increasing every other round until you get to 120 stitches. So since our circle for the top and the bottom are 120 stitches, that's the exact amount that we will need to chain for the cylinder, because we'll be matching those up 1 to 1 when we slip stitch them together. So go ahead and chain 120 stitches, and then starting in the very first chain, we're going to start working in the round. So you'll want to single crochet. I like to use the back humps of the stitch, that way it leaves a really nice bottom, or I guess you could say top part to this. So this side, it shows the V's of the stitches more, and that way it's easier to locate your stitches, I feel like, when you're joining these together. So what we will do is we will go ahead and single crochet 3 rounds. So since we are not joining and chaining 1, we're working this continuously, we will want another stitch marker to go ahead and mark that very first stitch of this round, and then we're going to single crochet 3 total rounds and then come on back. But I want to talk about the chart for this pattern. I love working from charts. I find I'm faster from them. So if you love charts, I want to go ahead and talk to you about this one. This, if you've never done infinity crochet, might look scary. I promise it's not. It's actually really easy to read. It's just that a lot of these symbols look different to us. So in these cable pattern, we only use a front float treble the entire time. So our key only really consists of the front float treble. I will be putting the single crochet stitch on here, but I really want to focus on this because that's what's really popping on this chart and what we want to understand. So this chart will always be read from right to left because we're working in rounds, and from bottom to top. Our last round on this chart being round 12, and then we'll have our repeats after that. For round 1, we can see we single crochet 5, and then you'll see this here. We're not working that for round 1. For round 1, 2, and 3, we're simply doing single crochet stitches. For round 4, this is where we start to get into working those cable stitches. So for round 4, we'll single crochet 5, and then this is our first front float treble. We're going to be working this around a loop from our first round, and then single crocheting once. We're single crocheting in between these front floats, and then doing that again. The reason why I like to write the charts this way is we're not substituting any of our background stitches for post stitches. We're floating them on the front, which means front float stitches are worked between stitches, not in lieu of a stitch. So as this chart goes, you'll see that then we have a cross here, and you'll notice that on this symbol, it has kind of a white surrounding showing that this one right here goes over this stitch. So we'll start by doing these first front float trebles, and then these two front float trebles will be worked over those previous ones. And then you just simply continue on. And then you notice right here we have a repeat. This is our repeat in the pattern that we work until the end, until the last 5 stitches. So notice there are 6 front float treble stitches and 5 single crochet. That's because we're not working a single crochet stitch after this one, because we go right back into the round over here. This is what I like to come up with for these front float stitches. I find it visually easy to pay attention to when I need to single crochet and do a front float, and I hope this chart helps you out as well. So now that we are on round 4, it's time to work some of these beautiful cables. There's some things I want to note about these cables, and that's that they come from an infinity crochet method. We're kind of doing a simplified version of that. It can get really intense and do a lot of really fun cables, but the most important thing to remember about these type of cables is we will not be skipping the stitch behind the cable. We'll be working all of the stitches behind each post stitch, and that makes it a floating stitch. That's the difference between working a regular post stitch and a floating stitch, so a front floating post stitch, is that we will be working the stitches behind it every single time. So to get started for round 4, we will single crochet in the first 5 stitches, marking the first stitch in the round. And then here comes our first floating stitch. So what we will do is we will yarn over twice. We're going to be doing a front float triple crochet, and we're going to go straight down. So just like look at your stitches and go straight down to the first round. And I like to not do a post stitch for this round around entire stitches. I like to just find a strand that's straight down from where I'm working and just work around that loop. So we're just going to work around a loop that's straight down from where we are now on our very first round, and then we're going to complete that post treble. So now that we have our first one, we're going to work the next stitch. So we're not skipping any stitches behind here. And now we're going to do that again. So yarn over twice, look straight down, grab a loop, sometimes I have to wiggle a little bit to find the loops. On rows or rounds after this, it'll get easier because then we will be working every front float around the previous front float stitches. And there's our second one. And now we are going to single crochet in the next stitch. So for the instructions, they'll read to do a front float treble and single crochet twice. So that's what we have done. And then we're going to single crochet again. And then for our next one, we're setting up to create a cross. So these next steps, we won't be working directly down. We're going to be working 3 stitches over. So we're going to look at our stitches and we're going to go 3 stitches over and then down to our first round. And that is where we will grab our next loop to work a front float treble into. Now you want to make sure these lay quite flat, that they're not pulling the fabric underneath your work. You want the background fabric to act as if it didn't have any post stitches on it. And then we are going to single crochet 1. And now we're going to do that again. And single crochet 1. So now we've made the first part of this crossing cable. We need to go back and make the other part of the cable. So we will be working these next front float stitches across this. So after completing the front float, after skipping 3 and doing the front float treble and single crocheting 1 twice, which is what we've done, we're going to do 1 more single crochet, and now we're ready to work our front float stitches back over here. We're working over the front float stitches we just made. So I'm going to yarn over twice, and then I'm going to go back to here, grabbing a loop from round 1. A lot of times I kind of like to turn my work at this point to work this treble. Just do whatever's comfortable for you. And then we'll single crochet 1, and then we're going to do that again. And then single crochet 1. So now we've completed our first cross. It'll get much easier as we get going because we will be working these stitches around these front float stitches, which then is easier to find instead of just grabbing loops from the first round. Then we're going to single crochet 1. And now we're going to do what we did over here again. So we're going to do a front float treble, grabbing a loop from the first round that we had worked, and single crocheting 1, and then do that again. So now this is what the cables are that we will see on the front of our poof. This is where the beautiful design comes from. Our next steps are to single crochet 4, and now we are going to work a front float treble around the loop from the first round, and then single crochet 1 5 times. So here's the first one. I'm just going to work directly below. These front float stitches kind of sit between our stitches, and you'll see what makes that happen on our next round, on round 5. So there's my first one and single crochet. We'll be doing this 5 times. So now I've done a front float treble crochet and then a single crochet stitch 5 times, and now we're going to do one more front floating treble stitch. And now we are going to single crochet 14 stitches. So our repeat around until we get to the last 5 stitches is to repeat doing this section here. So we will front float, treble crochet 1 and single crochet 5 times, and then do one more front float and then single crochet 14. So repeat that section until the last 5 stitches of this round. Now, as you notice as you work around, you might have some waviness to this. That is okay. That is absolutely normal for these rounds where we're working the cables. On the next round, it'll help it lay flatter when we get to that. So I've worked until I have 5 stitches left, and then we are going to do, once again, a front float treble from the loop from the first round, single crochet 1 in the very next stitch. We're going to be doing this for 5 times. So now that I have done that 5 times, we're going to do one more front float treble, but we will not be doing a single crochet after it because it really makes it so our stitches are even. We're kind of counting the first stitch of the next round to even that out. So we're just floating this last stitch and we are at the end of our round. And like I said, you'll have a little bit of waviness, but we're going to go ahead and tackle that now. I just want to note for this round, we still have 120 background stitches. So that remains the same on every round. We have 120 single crochet stitches. And as far as these post stitches go, we have 44 of those. So that's 120 background single crochet stitches and 44 floating stitches. Now for round 5, we are going to be single crocheting into each stitch around, but when we do this, we will always be skipping our floating stitches. So for this round, we are not working our floating stitches. We are working all 120 single crochet stitches, and we will skip those floating stitches. And let me show you what that kind of does. So now that I come to this floating stitch, I'll skip it and work the next one. And by doing that, it really helps push our post stitches to the front and make them kind of float versus sit down into our project. It really helps to pop them out when we work these background stitches, skipping all of those floating stitches. So now that we've worked all the way around, skipping those post stitches, we'll skip this last one when we work our first stitch of the next round, but you can see that it is no longer as wavy and it sits quite nicely, and these floating stitches now are really starting to take more shape and they're sitting on top of our work quite nicely. Now for round 6 and 7, we are just going to keep single crocheting into each stitch around and come back for round 8. Now for round 8, and for round 8 you can see like we've got this great setup going on, so this is going to feel a little bit easier than round 4 did. So I'm going to go ahead and move this stitch marker and single crochet into the first 5 stitches, placing that stitch marker back on the first stitch so we do not lose track of our rounds. Now for this next part, we're taking this cross that we did here, and we are going to be doing 2 of them. So we're going to be using the next 4 front float stitches to do this cross, but we're first going to skip these 2 front float stitches and work around these 2. So we'll start by yarning over 2 and then doing a post stitch, and sometimes when I do these post stitches for these type of cables, I don't always like to go around the whole thing. I find sometimes that can be a bit bulky, so I'll just grab a couple strands of it and then I'll continue doing that post stitch. Now something I want to note on here is you want to make sure that this does continue to lay flat across the front. If it doesn't and you need a little bit more length in this cable stitch, go ahead and yarn over one more time. I'm going to show that on the next stitch just so you can kind of see the difference. So single crocheted 1, and now I'm going to work around the second, or rather the 4th post stitch over here. So I'm going to yarn over, and if I find this is too tight, I'll yarn over one more and then complete that post stitch. And a trick when you're doing a lot of yarn overs is to pinch right here when you're ready to yarn over and pull through 2. And if you do that and you're pinching down here, it helps the cable have a better tension than if you didn't do that. So you can see the difference between these 2 cables, and I'll single crochet into the next stitch so we can really see the difference. I just want to go over this as an option, is if you find that these pull too much, feel free to do an extra yarn over and complete that cable stitch. Mine seems to be doing okay, so I'm going to undo that and go with as it is instructed with a treble. But everyone has different tensions on cables, especially when we're doing them crossing. So do what's most comfortable for you that gets the best look, and experiment a little bit. So now that I've done 2 front float trebles and single crocheted 1 twice, I'm going to single crochet 1 again. And now I'm ready to work my 2 front float trebles going back this way. So I'm going to start with my first. We're going to do a front float treble and single crochet 1, but we're going to be working back to our very first front float that we had skipped. And sometimes if you need to, it's helpful to kind of turn your work here to work these front float stitches. And then single crochet 1, and then I'm going to do that again. And single crochet 1. So now we've got this cross done. That looks so nice, and we're going to be doing that again. First we'll need to single crochet 1 as instructed, and now we're going to be repeating this one more time. So we're skipping the first 2 front float stitches and we're working around the next one, single crocheting 1, and then we'll front float treble again, single crochet 1, So we've done that step, and then we'll single crochet one, and now we're going to front float treble crochet, single crochet one twice, but we'll be working these back over these front ones that we had skipped. Awesome. Now that we have that done, we're going to single crochet 4. And then here comes our repeat until we get to the last 5 stitches. So you've already done this before, if you remember. We are going to do a front float treble and single crochet 1 5 times. That's our first one. I'm sure this round feels a bit easier than round 4 when we were just establishing these stitches. On round 4, it kind of feels like you're working a bit blind, where when you're working the rest of this up, you see exactly where you need to go, working down to those front floats from 3 rounds below. And now that we've done that 5 times, we're going to do a front float again, front float treble crochet, and then we are going to single crochet into the next 14 stitches. Remember to always check and make sure you're not skipping any stitches on the back. There should be no holes on the back of this work. This is a huge benefit to working the infinity crochet method, is we're not creating any gaps or holes on the back, which is perfect for a poof, because if we do decide to put little beads of stuffing inside of here, they cannot get through. And now that we've done this section, we're going to be doing that again until the last 5 stitches. So we're going to be working the front float treble crochet, single crochet 1 5 times, and then front float treble crochet, single crochet 14 stitches, and repeat that until the last 5 stitches in the round. Now that we are on the last 5 stitches of the round, we're going to do the front float treble crochet post stitches and single crochet 1 5 times. And then we're simply going to do one last front float treble crochet. Now as you're working this, you may find that you see the slant in this fabric. When working crochet in the round, it naturally slants. I just want to point out a couple ways you can resolve this. One is, instead of working these single crochet stitches in the way that most people do with the yarn over, you can yarn under when working the single crochet stitch. It makes more of an X here. It's a tighter stitch, so it might change your gauge just slightly, and that would be okay. Your cables will still work out fine, and that sometimes helps resolve this slant. The other option we can do is, before we go ahead and place this with the top and the bottom, when we're done creating the center piece, this body piece, with the cables, we can block it, and by doing a wet block and shifting your fabric, that can help even out the slant as well. So now for this next round, for round 9, we are going to once again single crochet into each stitch around, marking that first stitch so we don't lose our first round stitch, and we're going to single crochet, skipping all of those floating stitches, so 120 single crochet stitches, and being sure to skip all those front float stitches and only work those background single crochets. And then for rounds 10 and 11, we'll simply be single crocheting into each stitch around, so come on back for round 12. So now we are starting round 12, and round 12 is the same stitches as round 4. It's just that we're working them around the post stitches this time. So we'll just simply work round 4, but this time, instead of having to work down to the very first round, we're simply going to be working around the post stitches. So So I'll start by single crocheting 5, being sure to mark the very first stitch in the round. And now we're going to front post treble and single crochet 1 twice. And then we will single crochet 1 again. And now this is where we're going to work across again, just like we did before. So we're going to skip the next 2 front post trebles, and we are going to front float treble 1 and single crochet 1, and we are going to do that twice. And now we're going to single crochet 1, and we're going to go and work back to the stitches that we skipped, and we're going to front float treble and single crochet 1 twice. It's already looking kind of fun. And now we'll single crochet 1, and now we're going to front float treble and single crochet 1 twice. Making sure we're not skipping any of those background stitches. And next we will single crochet 4, and now we will front float treble crochet, and now we will front float treble and single crochet 1 5 times. And then we are going to front float treble and then single crochet 14, and that's our repeat around just like all the other rounds. And then this round will end the same way the other cable rounds did at the last 5 stitches. And then that is, well, all you need to know. This is all I'm going to be showing on camera for the cables, because everything after this is simply repeating. For the tall poof that is seen in the photos in this lighter natural color, I did the rounds 5 through 12. I repeated those 3 more times, and then I did 1 more round of 5 through 8. For the shorter one, this is this one I'm working up here. I kind of really like the idea of having this for a dog bed. You can make a shorter poof depending on what chair you want. If you just want to lift your feet up just a little bit, or if you just kind of want it as a short side table for things to set next to you. But I kind of want to make one for Luna. If you see my social media, I have the cutest 3-pound Pomeranian named Luna, Little Miss Luna Bean, and she loves the tall poof. She has jumped on it a few times, shockingly, and loves it. So I'm going to only repeat rounds 5 through 12 one more time, and then round 5 through 8 one more time. And I'm going to make this as a cute little dog bed for Luna. It could be a cute little cat bed, or you can use it for a lot of other things as well. And it's cute for a kid's room too. So I'm going to go ahead and work that up, and then we'll come back for assembly. Okay, now that I've got the repeats done that I wanted to make this cute little dog bed for Luna, it is time for me to bring back the top and the bottom pieces. Now the cool thing about this is there's really no right way to have top or bottom, because no matter which way we turn this, the top or bottom really doesn't make a difference in the look of it. So I'm going to go ahead, and for this side of the poof, I have one of my pieces here. I can take out my stitch marker. And what I want to do is I want to weave in this end, because we're going to be attaching this together. So we're going to finish this off by doing an invisible join here with our yarn needle. So to do an invisible join, I'm going to go into my next stitch, just as I would with any crochet hook, and I'm going to pull that, and then I'm going to go through the top center of my last stitch worked and pull that needle down. Now for finishing off anything, we have this beautiful mock stitch there. It's absolutely wonderful. We cannot tell where we started and stopped very easily. But when I don't want to add an extra stitch, because this actually adds an extra stitch, I'll pull it tighter. And then that way when I work this around again, I'm not counting that extra stitch, so that it matches up with my stitch count over here. So now I'll just weave in this end. To join these two pieces together, I'm going to take my hook through the back loop only of my next stitch of the center body of this poof, and then I'm going to grab the front loop only with the way it's facing me. So I'm leaving the loop on the back unworked, and then I will yarn over and pull through all the loops on the hook. So we're slip stitching, but through the back loop of our current piece, and then grabbing the front loop of our bottom or top piece, and then slip stitching. What this does is it makes a really nice join that also allows it to be kind of like a corner edge, to where it will give some shape and definition to this project. So I'm going to do this all the way around every single stitch. Your stitch counts should match up. So you're just going to do this for every stitch all the way around, and that's how we're going to join these two pieces together. Now that I've worked all the way around, I can go ahead and pull my yarn through and fasten off and weave in this end, and then we've got this awesome join here. Got like a nice crisp edge that will help this poof take shape. And now it's time for us to work on the other side. Now for the other side of this poof, you can repeat what we just did and stuff it as you go. Leave a little opening and then stuff it, and then complete the slip stitching to close it. If you do that, that's totally fine. Just know whatever you put in here stays in here. So if you have some old pillow foam or anything like that you just want to use and you're never going to open this up again, you can go ahead and slip stitch it closed and stuff it right before you do those last slip stitches, and then you've got your poof. Now if you want to be able to open this up again, say to wash it or to store toys in it, because I'm thinking I might be able to use this to store some of Luna's toys or old blankets, or if you're making a taller one for kids stuffed animals. So I want to go ahead and place a invisible zipper as I do this next section. That way when I want to open and close it, I can. To get started with this, we're going to be joining in the exact same way as we did before, but this time we're going to leave an opening for the zipper. And the zipper I bought is 22 inches. That's a bit long. I don't know that I will use all 22 inches. I may just go about 18 to 20 inches for the opening. But I want to put the zipper on the back part here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start working these together by joining them and working across this front part of the cable first, and then leaving an opening on this back part. So just like we did before, I'm going to work into the back loop of my circle here. So the panel that's facing me, the back loop, making sure the right sides are facing me as I do this. And then I'm simply going to grab the front loop of this side. That way we're leaving the lines on the outside for a nice edge. So we're leaving those unworked front loops and back loops hanging out here, and it creates an extra nice edge. So you're just grabbing the back loop and then the front loop, and I'm going to work this 4 ways until I get the opening, leaving an opening I want for that zipper. So now that I've crocheted to the point I want where I'm leaving an opening for the zipper, I can go ahead and fasten off and weave in this end. Now, if you've heard me talk before, I hate sewing. I loathe it. Me and my sewing machine, we broke up. We're not on speaking terms. It's not one of my favorite things to do, and I don't even like hand sewing. But there are some projects I find it's well worth a little bit of torture and the time to make your finished item work well for you and for what the purpose is. So I'm going to grab my needle and thread. I'm going to kind of hold my breath a bit through this because it's not my favorite thing to do. And I'm going to stitch this zipper inside of here, and let me show you how. I'm going to unzip this invisible zipper so that it's open, and then I'm going to be placing it inside here and making sure that it's right where I want it. And I want to make sure that I also leave a little bit of space on this end because I think it's a bit longer than I need, which is okay. And I'm going to stitch one side of this zipper all along here to the other side, and then I'll work on that end. Now I'm going to probably, the best thing to do here to make sure that I've got it in place is to take sewing pins and pin this zipper along here so you get it just right. So these pins will make it much easier to make sure you get your zipper in place just right. And I brought out my cute little pin cushion that I made. He's also available on my blog for free. He's inspired by one of my favorite desserts from a local restaurant. So I'm just going to be using my needle and thread here and weaving in and out and stitching this zipper to the edge of this. One thing to watch out for is to make sure that your yarn isn't going to get snagged inside the zipper teeth. So you don't want to go too close, but of course we do want to hide that invisible zipper as much as possible. But it also will probably be on the bottom back of this, so it won't be seen very often anyway. So I'm going to work this across here. So now that I've sewn the first side, it's time for us to do the second side of the zipper, and I have placed some pins in here to make sure that it's in place as it needs to be. And I've also zipped this closed and opened it again just to make sure that the zipper is lining up correctly. And now I will stitch the other side of this zipper to this opening. So now that I have the zipper in here, it'll be easy for me to wash this or stuff it with some toys, which is really nice. And the zipper can always go in the bottom back so it's not noticeable. And then you can fill this with whatever you want. If you are using those little white beads that are lightweight, if you want a really lightweight ottoman, I suggest going ahead and putting a lining inside of this, whether that be an old pillowcase or even a kitchen garbage sack, because it will make it easier when you want to take out the inside and wash it and you don't have those little floating beads everywhere that can be a little bit of a pain. I really hope that you have enjoyed making this poof, whether you use it for your home decor for yourself or for a pet bed. It's really, really fun to make and beautiful in any room. Thanks so much for joining me. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and come back for more projects soon.